You may know him from his podcast, Everybody is Awful. You may know him from Ozzy's Boneyard on Sirius XM or from his legendary stand-up comedy of over 25 years. Jim Florentine is my guest.
Reluctantly.
This podcast brought to you by homegirls.ca, a top producing team at Remax Professionals, and thompsonmortgages.com. They take care of the financials. You search for your perfect home. The combination of these two sponsors has helped me facilitate multiple real estate transactions, including my most recent move right here in 2025. Now, here's today's show.
Reluctantly.
Good to meet you. It's been a long time that I've known of you, but we've never met, and I'm hoping that we can cross paths when you come to the comic strip here on the weekend of August 28th and 29th in Edmonton.
I would love to. I was there one time before. There wasn't a lot to do, so let's go to lunch or something. I could hang out at the mall. That was about it.
Well, that's where the radio station is, where that I work at, do the morning show at the classic rock radio station. So we always used to have comics in on the radio show, and now I've got the podcast going. So this gives us an opportunity to kind of kill two birds with one stone. I get to talk to you long form on the podcast, and then take some clips and stuff and play it on the radio show and give you an opportunity to get some promotion that way as well.
I appreciate that. Thanks.
Stand up, still going strong, still killing it everywhere you go.
I love doing it. I'm my own boss up there. I can, make up my own schedule. I love that freedom. And as I get older, I enjoy it even more. Still love the process of just coming up with stuff, working it out and figuring it out and listening back and all that stuff. I love it.
Yeah, my wife and I went to New York City, and being exposed to the comedy scene in New York, so much different than anywhere else I had watched it. And you just never know who's at the back of the room that's coming up to work out 3 minutes of stuff so that they can do their special or whatever. It's just, we saw Michael Che there, and Louis C.K. was at the back of the room and unexpectedly came up. So, I mean, all of a sudden, it's a bill that you would pay $100 or $200 for to see in a big auditorium normally here in Edmonton, and all of a sudden we were seeing Louis for free or just for the ticket price of getting in. And it's a cool scene, that's for sure.
Yeah, I mean, that's where we go. I'm in Jersey, so I've worked in New York clubs all the time, the Comedy Cell, Understand. Yeah, that's where we work out our stuff, bring it out on the road, just kind of hone it and go up and do 15-minute sets on a Monday night, Tuesday night. Like tomorrow night, I got 2 shows, 2 15-minute sets to work some stuff out.
The special you did at Governor's that I watched on YouTube, how recent was that?
A year ago.
It was a year?
Yeah. I usually wait about 8 months to put it out once I film it because I'm trying to come up with new material. So when I go start touring and I put that out there, they don't see the same stuff. That's what most comics do. We wait a little while to put it out so we can build up a new set. I love starting with a clean slate, like after I film it. And I'm like, man, now I got to come up with all new stuff. Like it's terrifying, but it's also exciting.
Do you write with pals, or do you chum around with comedy buddies and stuff and come up with stuff, or do you do it all on your own?
I do it all on my own.
I just wondered, like Voss and Bonnie McFarlane, being married and stuff. I worked with Bonnie a little bit out in Scottsdale for Bronson when they did the roast of Shane Doan out there. We did some writing together. That was pretty fun.
Yeah,
and, that must be a weird dynamic for those two. I mean, they're both kind of weird anyway, I guess, right?
Yeah, and they have completely different material, the two of them.
So how you and I are the same age? We're both, well, you just turned 61 back earlier in August or whatever it is, but
yeah,
you and I are the same age. But you have a teenage boy. How's fatherhood of a teenager going?
It's awesome. He's having girls come over tonight for the first time, so. They got like him and his buddy, and there's 2 girls. They're going to go down the basement. I'm like, all right, what do you guys need? You need some drinks, some chips, watch some movies. So, I just hope they have hot moms that are single.
Yeah, that's the bit that you were talking about when you were coaching his basketball team, the way you drafted the kids. How often do you appear on the Legion of Skanks? Is that a regular thing, or is that just occasional with Big J and those guys?
Yeah, I do probably, I don't know, maybe once a year or so, whenever they got a slot open and stuff. So it's a fun show. I've known those guys forever.
And your podcast, Everybody is Awful, it's going well for you. I find it super interesting that comedians, over the years, I've had so many on the radio show, and seeing everybody morph into podcasts. like yourself and well, obviously Rogan and then Bert Kreischer and other guys that it ends up being another form of revenue for the arts, for an artistic person, for a performer like yourself. Is that, you find that's the case and it's working out pretty good?
Yeah, I mean the revenue, and plus, you could do it on your own, and it helps you build a fan base. You collect the people to listen to. You plug your comedy dates; they'll come out and support. So it's a little bit of everything. But I love it because I started in radio before I did comedy, and I was out pretty quick because I didn't want to, play, Phil Collins solo songs and then talk for 30 seconds and give the weather. I'm like, this isn't for me. I originally thought I wanted to do that, so I started doing comedy. So there's almost like my own radio show.
You're telling me that you don't have One More Night and Against All Odds on your playlist?
The worst song probably ever written in the history of music is Susu Studio. Horrific. I just can't believe that guy back in our day was like the biggest rock star. Like he was at one point was like the biggest guy, his solo stuff. In every video, he's trying to be funny. It's just like that guy.
I guess for the time and for the video aspect of rock and roll that was happening at the time, you think back to the Dire Straits stuff with their cartoon stuff, and then the Twisting by the Pool video, they were trying to incorporate comedy, and Phil Collins had his own special, but he looked more like an accountant than anything.
I know. I just didn't like his solo stuff. I thought it was pretty lame. It was real commercial. It wasn't like Genesis. Genesis was a really good band and stuff. But I mean, yeah, I guess that was the time. All those guys became commercial. Don Henley, his stuff got really commercial, unlike the Eagles. So they all did that stuff, Glenn Frey.
Were you a fan of the original Genesis, or like with Peter Gabriel as
Not
singer?
really. I was more of a hard rock guy, but I respected it. It was good music. It still stands the test of time.
Reluctantly.
This podcast is reluctantly sponsored by the real estate team of homegirls.ca, a top producing team at Remax Professionals. If you are buying or selling in the Edmonton region, Shauna and Bonnie can handle everything with strong industry connections to mortgage brokers, home inspectors, lawyers, and contractors to support every step of the process. The market is very active right now. We recently listed our home, again, and it went from MLS to closing conditions in 8 days. Now, of course, results may vary from property to property, but Shauna and Bonnie have been our trusted real estate advisors through buying and selling no less than 7 properties. I've recommended them to many friends who want real, relatable people with a personalized, hands-on approach. New home, investment, recreational, even commercial properties. Homegirls.ca is the website. Email info is right there, and the phone number is 780-517-HOME.
Reluctantly.
It's funny, just learning more about you and knowing stuff about you over the course of when I first heard you on Sirius. So it's been that long with you doing comedy stuff, and then of course now Ozzy's Boneyard and so on, and us being the same age. And being in Ozzy's Boneyard, and there's lots of stuff we could talk about Ozzy in a second here, but I'm guessing that us being the same age, you probably got into the hard rock at the same time as I did with, On Through the Night and then High and Dry with Def Leppard and then Blizzard of Oz. And like it was almost the second generation of heavy metal, the hair metal that came in before or after the Black Sabbath. Because I was the same way. I didn't really get into Black Sabbath until after Ozzy, left.
I was in it a little before because I had 2 older brothers. But when they were 17, 18, I was 12, 13. They'd just be driving around cranking AC/DC, Judas Priest, Black Sabbath. So I was Ted Nugent, like all that stuff. So I knew all of that stuff about 12. I was going to see shows when I was like 12, 13 years old. They were taking me to. I saw some amazing shows. So I was in a little before, that. But yeah, and I wasn't a big fan of the hair metal stuff. I like more of the harder stuff, the Metallicas, that kind of stuff. The Ozzy solo and stuff. I wasn't really into too much of the hair stuff. Motley Crue was fine, and I wasn't crazy about the rest of the stuff.
So you're the Slayer, the Metallica, the Pantera, that
Motorhead,
kind of
Motorhead, yeah. Yeah, that was my wheelhouse. Iron Maiden, Judas Priest, the heavier stuff. The uglier the band I liked. I wasn't crazy about the pretty boy bands.
So anybody who wore makeup or anything like that. What about Night Ranger or Fastway? Or
I Night Ranger, they're still out there, and I see them a lot because I perform it as like it's called the Monster Rock Cruise, where they have a lot of 80s bands on there. And I go on and I host and I do comedy on the ship, and I see them doing 2 sets each time, and they're still amazing. They got poppy songs, but they weren't really a hair metal band, Night Ranger, I didn't consider him. Brad Gillis was, in Ozzy. So that's when I first heard of him, when he started, he was already, when the first Night Ranger came out. So, some of the bands, well, who was the other one? Night Ranger and who?
Fast Eddie
Fastway
Clark
was great,
Fast-
because that was
yeah.
Fast Eddie Clark's band after he left Motorhead. Pete Way was in it originally, but he didn't, he was out at one point. But that was, it was like a Zeppelin record, just like the Kingdom Come record, which I still love that first Kingdom Come record. I know it's Zeppelin, but it's good.
Didn't you do stand-up to open for, was it Slayer that you used to open for Slayer? What was that like? Did everybody know that a comic was opening for their metal band, or what? How did that go?
Well, yeah, it was Slayer, Megadeth, and Anthrax. And they were doing arenas, and they hired me to be like the host and MC. It was like Jägermeister hired me. I had to promote Jägermeister, but I had to do like 3 5-minute sets in between each band. And they knew me because that metal show was on the air. So I'd say probably 70% of the crowd knew me. But when I went on the first time, when Anthrax went on, the building's like half empty. They were great. The second time was like, all right. And by the third time with Slayer, they didn't want any part of me. Like, all right, enough, dude. We've had enough. We don't want to hear any more jokes and stuff. And I'm like, hey, man. So it was a battle, but I liked it. They were throwing stuff at me. I'd be yelling back. I like that feistiness. Some guy punched me in the back of the head after the show because I thought I was taking time away from Slayer. Like, I've always been that drunk guy in the crowd when the local DJ goes up on stage and he's babbling. Meanwhile, they don't even play their music, right? But they're, oh, yeah. And then I'm like, shut up. I'm drunk and high. I'm like, come on, I'm missing one more. Ozzy could have played one more song. Enough with the announcements. And I would tell him after I realized what I was doing, I said, listen, it's 8:55. Slayer's going on at 9:01. I'm doing 8:55 to 9 o'clock. I'm getting off stage and they're coming on 1 minute after. So I'm not wasting anybody's time. So I'm going to tell a few dick jokes. If you don't like them, go take a piss, go get a beer. But this is what I got to do. So I'd explain it to them.
Who are some of the people that you've had on your show on Ozzy's Boneyard that you thought, holy shit, I'm sitting here interviewing this guy, or I'm sitting here this guy, or I know this guy? What are some of those people?
I don't do that many, but David Lee Roth was a huge one. I got him to co-host the show a couple different times. He was up at Sirius. I did like morning radio with him with Jim Norton, and then I was like, hey, I do a show. He's like, yeah, let's do it. So that was a great one. I had Gene Simmons. I've had Joe Perry. And then recently I was at the last Black Sabbath show, so I interviewed a bunch of the guys for Ozzy's Boneyard. Jakey Lee, which has been, disappeared for the last 37 years.
Tell me about, you met Ozzy a number of times, had you not?
Yeah.
And being, well, I mean, you do stuff on Sirius on Ozzy's Boneyard, so obviously there's a huge connection, and being able to go to the show, how incredible was that?
It was the Heavy Metal Live Aid. Black Sabbath's my favorite band of all time. And I was a huge Ozzy fan. When Ozzy, left, got fired from Sabbath and Dio joined Sabbath, I was on Ozzy's side. I was a kid. I was angry. So I've always been a huge Ozzy fan. And then, I've been working on the channel. But I knew when they said it's Black Sabbath's last show with the original 4, I said, I'm going no matter what. I don't care. I'm getting there. And Jim Norton, another comic, that's how we bonded when we first started doing stand-up over Ozzy. So we both made the trip over there, and thank God we did. And it was the best concert I've ever seen, because just the crowd was in such a great mood. Everybody knew what it was about. It was Black Sabbath's last show. All these legendary bands paying tribute to them. That it was just an awesome, awesome day. Perfect day, 70 and sunny. It was just a big celebration. Ozzy was great doing a solo, and then with the Sabbath. You couldn't ask for more.
How did he look?
He didn't look bad. I mean, you could tell he looked, he didn't look great. I saw him after the show, after the set. So, he couldn't walk. He was in a wheelchair. He had Parkinson's. He had other stuff going on. He didn't do a show for, I think, 7 years. And he really he kept canceling shows whenever we put him on here and there. And then, he just really wanted to do this last show and really work himself into shape. And no one knew if he was going to be able to even do it. Because he even said, look, I'm going to try to do a set. I don't know. I might just do bits and pieces with the band. I'm not sure. So he didn't even know until, I guess the day of the show or the week of the show. But I thought it was great.
When you went over with Norton to do your stand-up there, was it 93 or 94 or whatever? Did you meet Ozzy then? When was the first time you met him?
No. That was the first time I met Ozzy was probably like 90. No, I met him early on in 81 and 80 when I was living down in Florida. Blizzard of Oz was out. And what Ozzy would do up till, even like No More Tears, he would do a record store appearance. If he was in that town, he would go sign, his album at a record store. So I'd always go, when he would come around to New York or Florida when I was living down there, and then went back up in New York. So I met him a bunch of times. So I met him with Randy. I met Randy Rhoads with him. The whole band was there, the whole Blizzard of Oz band. And I got all the autographs on an album and all that stuff. I had Ozzy sign my knuckles too. And I didn't wash my hand for like 3 weeks. I put a bag out in the shower, you know what I mean? Just so it wouldn't rub off.
Did you ever consider getting a tattoo of the signature?
No, I never did. I mean, I was a kid at that time, and I was 16, I think. So my parents wouldn't have let me anyway, but it was cool.
So you're 16 years old. You meet Randy Rhoads. Did you realize the gravity of that happening?
No, I mean, but between the Blizzard of Oz and Diver Madman record, they were amazing, and he was great in concert. He was super nice. I met him a couple times. I would get outside the venue early and just hang out and wait for them to come up for sound check and stuff. So I saw him like 3 nights in a row in Florida, that Blizzard of Oz band on the first tour, and then a couple more times. But, you didn't know the magnitude of it. But, I remember that day because I was going to see him about 5 more days down in Florida when the plane crash happened.
It was that soon.
Yeah, because it was the beginning of the Diver Madman tour.
Jesus.
And he was playing like 5 days later with like UFO and some other band. I think I wasn't sure, but I was going to see that. I didn't see the Diver Madman tour because it happened so early on in the tour.
You just mentioned UFO. How about Michael Schenker Group?
Phenomenal.
I know, the Scorpions.
Yeah, and he's going to tour in the States. I don't know if he's coming to Canada, but all like UFO stuff in the fall. He's doing all the old UFO, which is going to be great.
When did you are you into the Scorpions?
I love the Scorpions.
Okay, when did you get into the Scorpions? Which album?
Love Drive.
Love Drive. Okay, I was gonna say, like Animal Magnetism, Love Drive. Have you ever heard Lonesome Crow?
Yeah. I'm not crazy about the early Scorpion stuff. Some of it's okay. Taken by Force, I love that record. That's a really good one. But yeah, I tried to get into the early. Some of the songs are okay, but they're a little too trippy for me.
Yeah, well, Lonesome Crow was 1968. It was so trippy. It was like Pink Floyd was back at that time with all the wacky shit that was going on.
Crazy, yeah. But as a kid, seeing the Love Drive album cover and then open it out in the back, and you actually see her tit, you're like, wow, this is amazing.
I know. And I thought, we're at the age where, hey, look at that, it's a boob, or wow, that's a waste of gum.
Yeah, I remember they would wrap the thing in like blue so you couldn't see it in the record store, so you had to rip that wrapping off the back of the album cover. That's when she showed her tit.
Yeah, and Virgin Killer, the original album cover, Virgin Killer, remember?
Yeah. I didn't get turned on by that, but Love Drive definitely.
Well, no, yeah, obviously you don't get turned on by it, but
I know.
Just the controversy around it with the shattered glass and all of this stuff.
Even the Animal Magnetism, there's all kind of weird stuff going on there. And meanwhile, the Blackout album cover is probably my favorite album cover of all time.
Yeah, with the head wrapped with the forks in the eyes.
Iconic.
Did you like with the metal stuff, being a metal freak and leaning towards the Metallica and that sort of genre more so than the Motley Crue and the other stuff? What about, did you you skip a genre and just go to the Van Halen and that kind of stuff, or what did you think? Because I don't know if I would ever consider Van Halen heavy metal. It was just good edgy rock, right?
I love that Van Halen. I was on board in '78 when the album came out because they were opening for Black Sabbath at Madison Square Garden. It was going to be my first concert, and the album was out for a couple months. They were playing, I think, You Really Got Me on the radio, and my brothers went out and got the record. I'm like, man, these guys are good, So I saw them probably 5 times, the original 4, back in the day. And they were amazing. No, I was a huge Van Halen still to this day. I just saw David Lee Roth last week in Atlantic City, and he was great.
And it's funny, you mentioning David Lee Roth. He was one of my very first interviews when I came to Edmonton in 1986. So it would have been shortly after that. I think it was for the Eat 'Em and Smile when he went solo. And I got to interview him on my evening radio show, and it was like a huge highlight. And he talked to me like he knew me from 10 years ago, right?
Right.
He just go on the phone right away, showman instantly, and he was like that. So it was great to chat with him.
It's good that he's back out there doing it, you know. He's got a good backing band with them, helping him out with the backing vocals and stuff. But just seeing him up there, I mean, it's Dave.
Yeah.
Guy's a legend.
Reluctantly.
This podcast reluctantly sponsored by ThompsonMortgages.com. Not limited to just mortgages. They also provide insurance. Almost any service associated with a home or building purchase can be done in-house. And for anything beyond that, they have an extensive network of professionals at their fingertips. Consolidations, loans, mortgages, legal services, accounting services, financial planning, insurance. They are your one-stop shop. How do I know this? Well, Mike at ThompsonMortgages.com has helped us out with our mortgages for the last few real estate transactions that we have made. You can be confident that they will work hard to ensure all your mortgage and insurance goals are fulfilled. Check them out for yourself. ThompsonMortgages.com.
Reluctantly.
You mentioned with being on Ozzy's side when he got booted out of Black Sabbath and Ronnie James Dio taking over. Actually, Mob Rules is when I got into Black Sabbath. And then I found out that Ozzy was the actual singer of Black Sabbath for the longest time. Having been at the concert in the UK for the final performance, solo stuff, and then with the original guys with Bill and Tony and
Geezer.
Geezer, yeah. And then 17 days later, we lose Ozzy. What goes through your head then?
It was crazy because he'd always say in interviews that his dad, Ozzy's dad, retired at 60. And like 2 weeks later, he dropped dead. He goes, he had nothing to do. You know, working was his whole life. And then all of a sudden he was retired. He's like, what do I do? What does he do? So I never want to retire. And then cut to Ozzy, 17 days after he does his last show, basically retiring from the stage, and he dies.
And it's just, it's like the guy that wins the World Series and he says, thank you very much. I'm retiring after, 14 or 18 or whatever years in the bigs. Or, somebody wins the Stanley Cup and says, thank you very much. That'll be good.
Absolutely. Because, it was in their hometown of Birmingham where they're all four from. And they never did that soccer stadium, the Aston, whatever. They never did that stadium ever. And he used to always go to games there and stuff. So it was an honor for them. And, he told Sharon after the show, I can't believe how many people still like me. Like he was that insecure like I was. And then when you saw it when he passed away, I've never seen so much love for I've never seen that since I don't even know who, like what celebrity that passed away. All the tributes and just the nonstop Ozzy, the tributes to him. It's crazy. I mean, it's almost like, it's going to be like Paul McCartney level. Like when Paul passed away, that's how big Ozzy was, and the tributes that came in everywhere.
I think when it comes to those, like Ozzy and Sabbath now, widely considered, I guess, classic rock for the, lack of a better term. But I think that's what, when Ozzy says, I can't believe this many people still like me. I think that there is more interest in classic rock now than there ever has been, because all of the people who made it, from back in the late 60s to right through to the mid 80s, we're losing them. So even young people, it's not like the guys like us who've been fans since the stuff was new, but the young people come in and they want to know more, and they're losing them, like Tom Petty and Ozzy and Eddie Van Halen, and these guys are dropping like flies, and there's so much more interest from young people in the genre now. I think it's growing more than it has probably in 20 years.
Absolutely, because that music is timeless. To me, the 70s was the best decade for music. Those songs are timeless, so they still connect even with young people. My 15-year-old son, he's starting, he knows all the metal. He's been to a bunch of shows, but he's really getting in like 90s, like new metal and metal, like Stone Temple Pilots, Creed, all those bands and stuff like that. He's Oasis. He's getting in all that. And all of his friends are too, because they got into rap or hip hop and they realized that's just trash. It's like, it's not even good. It's just like pop, auto tune and stuff. And they're starting to get into rock, which is good. They went to country for a little bit. So, and he knows all the 70s stuff. He still listens to some of that stuff too. But yeah, that shit is timeless. And that's why those songs are just great. Foreigner. Foreigner's got fucking 15 hits that are just amazing.
And they're still touring. They're still going.
with nobody, no original guy. Well, now Lou Graham is doing some shows with them, but there was no original guys in the band, which is crazy.
Even you look at Styx, they've got Larry Gowan, a Canadian guy that's filled in for Dennis DeYoung, of
Yeah.
course, but mostly the other guys are still there. And yeah, lots and I'm finding a lot of these guys are going on cruises. They're team up with 4 or 5 other bands, and away they go on a cruise. BTO and the Guess Who are doing it, for God's sakes.
It's crazy. It's big business. You know, I've been doing, like I said, I'm doing this monster rock cruise, and it's all like these, you know, hair bands, and you know, you'll get a Michael Schenker and Accept and stuff like that, and their Crocus Rose Tattoo. But it's a lot of that, and it's packed every. They've been doing it for 15 years. The bands have to do 2 shows over the course of 5 days on the ship, and they get paid really well. I don't know what it is, but it's a lot. So for them, it's like, okay, no problem. I don't know if they go tour. I'm just on it. And it's almost like a vacation for them, too.
Yeah. Have you ever gone on a Kiss cruise?
No, I was
No.
never a big Kiss fan.
No.
I respect them, but I was never a big, you know.
I was the Kiss guy. I was the kid drawing on the back of my scribblers in school and stuff like that, drawing the Kiss. And then when Ozzy came out with his solo albums, that's when, okay, enough Kiss. And now I'm into Ozzy and this other stuff. So
I think I would. If my brothers never got into Kiss. If they would have, I would have been into them too. It was pretty much whatever they put on, I started liking. Like I even got into the Doors when I was a kid. My brothers liked them, you know. But Kiss, they just missed a boat with me. So I started listening to them in the '80s when they took the makeup off.
What are you working on? Are you working on any TV special? I don't know. You said you're going to clubs and working some stuff out, doing 15s and that sort of thing. Are you working on some TV stuff or anything like that?
No, I wish, you know, that'd be nice. No, but I just, you know, doing the stand up and doing a podcast and, you know, that's it. You know, you never know what falls in your lap at some point. I don't know. You know, I've done some acting stuff. I always audition and stuff. So who knows what will pop up at some point. Yeah. I still got the stand up to fall back on, which I always love. You know, I do the show on Ozzy's Boneyard once a week, which is great. I get to pick my own playlist. It's a 2-hour show, you know, so I play all the deep cuts, the whole, you know, classic hard rock and metal. I love doing that. And, you know, and doing the touring. I always get the stand up to fall back on if nothing else is going on. And I love doing that. If that's what it is, that's what it is. It's still great.
And really, when it comes down to it, your stand-up is what you're falling forward on. You're not falling back on it. That's your first love, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Because, you know, like I said, your own boss. I could say whatever I want. I could wear whatever I want on stage. I love that freedom. You know, so to me, it's, you know, and still just being creative after all these years and putting comedy specials, almost like a band. Okay, you know, tour for 2 years, put a new album out. Put another album out. That's the way I look at it.
Good deal, man. Well, looking forward to your show coming up, August 28th, 29th, 30th at the Comic Strip in West Edmonton.
It's actually,
Mall?
I think it's August 29, 30, 31. It's wrong on my website. I'm doing Friday, Saturday, Sunday that weekend.
Right. Okay.
So, yeah, but come out. Oh, let's hang, you know, when I'm in town.
Yeah, 29, 30, 31. That's awesome. JimFlorentine.com. And, of course, the podcast. Everybody
is off of my new comedy specials on my YouTube channel.
Right.
YouTube.com/Jim Florentine Comedy. It's called You Can't Please Them All. You can watch it there for free.
And, of course, on Ozzy's Boneyard with the weekly radio show that ends up, they replay it, I think, 5 times a week.
I know.
Like that.
Yeah, they get their money's worth.
Yeah. Cool. Right on, man. Well, good to chat with you, and we appreciate it. We'll see you when you're in town on the 29th through 31st of August.
Yeah, and let's get in touch.
Reluctantly.
This podcast reluctantly sponsored by homegirls.ca, a top producing team at Remax Professionals, and thompsonmortgages.com. They take care of the financials. You search for your perfect home. If you're searching for a home in the Edmonton area, please use both of these fine sponsors.
Reluctantly.